I'm Olivia. I am a wildlife and travel photographer. My goal is to inspire people to give a shit.
I'm Pat. Spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. I have strong views on conservation and the U.S. Constitution.
We will discuss topics like yoga,
How to gut a deer and not fuck up your meat.
orgasmic meditation,
Full body orgasms.
life after divorce.
Life after death.
Why the fuck do we still use plastic bags?
Why can't everyone learn guitar in school?
What do you look for in the perfect photo?
What's in my food?
What's in my mouth?
We might also dabble in a little bit of motorcycles. That's right. She rides a Harley, bitches. While our upbringings drastically differed,
Our ability to communicate and be open-minded has allowed us to strengthen our relationship. So this podcast is here for you to broaden your horizons, possibly change your perspective on a topic. So we hope you enjoy listening to the Hunter and Hippie. Welcome to the Hunter and Hippie. He's the hunter
Okay.
and I am the hippie. So clearly I brought you on because we've worked together in the community. I wanted to get more information for the public on bees and how we can make an impact on the quality of their life, which then affects our life. So you are Parks, Recreation, and Forestry
Correct.
Superintendent. What exactly does that mean?
That means that I oversee the day-to-day operations of the Parks Division for the city of Spearfish. So we take care of all the parks in town, 4 different sports complexes, the rec path, the trails on Lookout Mountain, some of the other open space properties that we have where the 27-hole disc golf course is, the trails up on Lookout Mountain, the Rose Hill Cemetery, the city campground,
A lot.
a lot,
Okay.
as well as the urban forest. We take care of all the trees on city-owned property as well.
How many acres is that roughly that you manage?
I think we have 1,500 acres just up on Lookout Mountain.
Really? That
Yeah.
much?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a good amount for sure.
So you stay busy.
We stay busy.
Yeah. The part that piqued my interest in bringing you on is how Spearfish you got like sun right on your face. You didn't say anything, babe.
It just cleared the tree.
Oh, should we close the blind?
Yeah.
Yeah. We just decided to nix the headphones because we can hear ourselves talk better this way. The part that piqued my interest was how we have become a bee city. What does that mean to the people that are listening?
Yeah. So being a bee city is actually pretty cool. I first moved to Spearfish with my family in 2018. We moved here. My wife had a job. My job was to be a stay-at-home dad with the 2 kids for a couple months until we got them into daycare. And that was a lot of fun. That was actually the best job I ever had.
Yeah, totally. Definitely.
Then we got the kids into daycare and I had to figure out something to do. So I ended up going back to school at Black Hills State University, enrolling in the master's program in sustainability. So I started there in January of 2019 and got hired on as a graduate assistant in sustainability. And at that time, I got to work on a bunch of different sustainability initiatives on campus, which was really fun. And one of the things that we discovered was this Bee Campus, Bee City program. It's through the Xerxes Society. They're a national company, organization. And so I helped get the ball rolling for BHSU to become a Bee Campus USA. In April of 2019, I accepted a position as the park superintendent for the city of Spearfish. And so I left my job there as a GA, put school on hold for a little bit, and went to work for the city. But I always remembered the Bee Campus program that we had worked on and knew that there was a Bee City program as well. So that was something that I had always wanted to look into, see if it was something that was even feasible for us to do as a city. I pitched the idea to my supervisor a couple of years after I'd been in that position. I'd felt out the job, knew what we were doing, what our goals were, and understanding that sustainability, and especially when it comes to native pollinators and native plantings and things like that, is very important to the community here. And I looked back at the Bee City program and saw that a lot of the commitments that you had to make as a Bee City affiliate were already in line with a lot of the things that we were doing operationally and a lot of the goals that we had.
What exactly does somebody or a city or campus, what do they have to do?
I'm glad you asked.
I'm glad you asked.
There's a list here. I brought the list so that I wouldn't miss any. So there are commitments that you have to make to become a Bee City. And when I looked at the commitments, I was thinking, this is stuff that we're already doing.
Mhm.
But I had to get the proper permissions. So I got it passed by my supervisor, brought it up to him. He was basically in favor of it and said, if you're willing to do the extra work and you think you can do it, go for it. I put together a presentation, brought it to our Park, Rec, and Forestry Advisory Board, which is a group that meets every month. It's a group of citizens that are nominated by the mayor to serve on a board as an advisory committee. Gave the pitch to them. They all liked it. They all supported it. So ultimately, I ended up giving the presentation to the city council for their final approval, which they gave us. And so after that, we were able to have the mayor sign a resolution in November of 2023 saying that basically the mayor and the rest of the elected officials and city staff, everybody was on board with this idea of becoming a Bee City affiliate. So what does that mean? What do we have to do? The first commitment that we have is we have to establish a standing Bee City USA committee. So I had to figure out who wanted to be on that committee. By this time, there was already talk going around. People had heard about the presentation, knew what was going on. I had been having conversations with people, and I knew that there were people that were interested in being involved. We've developed a committee. We meet regularly. We meet every third Thursday of the month, 10:30 at City Hall. It is an open public meeting, so anybody from the community is invited to come and ask questions or just see what we're doing, what we're talking about. We actually have had a lot of community participation and
Really?
people just showing up randomly.
Yeah.
They either have questions about what kind of plants should we plant, what are good for pollinators, how can I help, things like that, different projects that their groups or organizations have wanted to do, and they come to us and get more information. I would encourage anybody that's listening, first of all, if you're interested in learning more, you can go to our website, which is spearfish.gov, and you click on the parks page, and there's a link to a Bee City page that's got more information. Then we have a specific page on our website that talks about some of the things that we've done just here in the city
Okay.
and some local information. But for anybody that wants to get involved, they can check out the website. They can give me a call. We can put my contact information.
We can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get that in there. So they can call me. They can show up to a meeting. They can just look on the website. That's one thing that we really want to try to push out there is a lot of information to the public, just letting people know what's going on. We were able to establish the committee. We meet regularly. It's made up of some city staff and then members of the community, some that are involved. We've got Eva Chase, who is the sustainability coordinator up at Black Hills State University. We have myself and a couple other park staff, some staff from planning and zoning that are on there. Engineering has a representative on there. Kelly Harnett from Beautify Spearfish. She's a very influential member and does a lot of stuff with the community. And so she's on the committee as well. We have a local nursery owner who's on the committee. We have a nice diversity of people that are on there and represented throughout the community that are on this committee.
So you have a committee.
Mhm.
Then what exactly does the town have to do?
The town doesn't necessarily have to do too much.
Okay.
They can do as much or as little as they would like to do.
So anybody can be a Bee City community?
Any community who goes through the process. So the first process is getting that resolution signed off by the mayor and the elected officials.
Mhm.
So you have to have somebody, and it's usually housed within city staff members
Okay.
or a department within the city. It can be a nonprofit organization or a different community organization that kind of takes the charge, but they still need, sign off by the mayor and the city council. So anybody can get involved that way. Any community that's interested or any organization that's in a community could be a part of it. Now, the one neat thing about us in Spearfish is that we were the first city in South Dakota that is both a Bee City USA and has a Bee Campus USA. I wanted to be the first Bee City. Rapid City beat me to it.
Oh, darn it. But now we're both.
But now we've got both. So I think
neener.
yeah, exactly. And so I think it's pretty cool because we're able to work with Eva and the rest of the people up at Black Hills State to help out, partner up on different projects, just help each other out. You can help us with our Bee City program. We can help them with their Bee Campus program. There's a lot of information sharing and partnerships that's happening.
So since 2023, when Bee City USA initiative was voted in by council, since then, what impactful changes have been made to the local public lands?
Great question. I'm glad you asked. So one of the big highlights for me last year, so basically 2024 was our first year as a Bee City affiliate. We got our committee stood up, we started meeting regularly and started talking about things we could do. One of the big things that we did that I think was a highlight for us was right in front of City Hall. There was a landscaped bed. They have a grounds crew that kind of manages the grounds at City Hall, and they approached us and said, "Hey, we're thinking about redoing this landscaping over here. Do you guys have any ideas about what we could do?" And we were thinking about it, and I said, "Hey, why don't we look at putting in a pollinator garden?" We just started this Bee City thing. Having a pollinator garden right in front of City Hall would be a great way to showcase the program, let people know what's going on. And they were all for it. With park staff, we went over there, we tore out the existing landscaping, prepped the site, got it ready for native plantings. And we thought, well, instead of us just going in there and doing native plantings, how about we do this as a community outreach thing? And so we advertised it as a native plant planting class that was open to the public. And so we had park staff members there. We had Kelly there from Beautify Spearfish. We had Black Hills State representatives there with Eva. We involved the Northern Hills Master Gardeners. We have one of their members is a member of our committee as well. And so we had 2 Northern Hills Master Gardeners come up with a planting plan for the site. You know, they took the dimensions, they figured out what kind of native plants we should use, how we should plant them. We procured all the plants, all the material that we needed, and we did it as a little bit of a showcase. We had probably 25 to 30 people there. The mayor stopped by for a little bit, which was nice. He actually got his hands dirty and helped us plant some plants out front there. And so it was really nice that we were able to take that project and turn it into a community outreach education event. So now anybody that goes to City Hall is going to walk right past the pollinator garden. We have a sign out front there that identifies that as a pollinator habitat, as well as a QR code that they can scan, and it'll go to our Bee City webpage on the City of Spearfish website. And it gives some details about the project, the planting plans, and some things like that.
So what kind, I mean, I know a few, and I won't go off on them. What are what? Shut up. South Dakota, I know, is a harder zone in the country for plants. We're in the plains, but we're in the mountains here. So it's a little different than the rest of South Dakota. What are some of the native plants that are easiest to procure and just the hardiest for people if they wanted to plant them in their yard?
Sure. And that's one of the first questions we get from people is, what kind of plants should I plant and where can I get them? And those are actually some of the commitments that we have to Bee City, is to provide a native plant planting list for people and spread that information throughout the community. So we developed this, which is our Northern Hills native plant list.
Is that online where we can put it in the show notes?
Yep. This is
Okay,
online.
sweet.
It's on our website. Shout out to Quick Signs for getting this nice, pretty copy put
There you
together
go.
for us. What we did is we worked with the Xerxes Society. So they have the country broken down into regions. And so we were able to find native plants to our region. That's where we started. So we took that list, and then we worked with Nicole from Beck's Nursery, who's also on our committee, a local nursery owner. We asked her to take a look at that list and kind of pare it down to what plants she usually has in stock or are readily available. And so she went through and she crossed some out and she highlighted some that she usually has. And we ended up with a list of about 25 different plants that are native to this area, that grow well in this environment, and that are locally available right here in Spearfish. The brochure that we have here lists all those plants. It also talks about the different times that they bloom, the different heights that they'll get. Really, when you're putting together a pollinator garden, you want plants that bloom at different times throughout the season. So ones that are in early spring, some that'll bloom in midsummer, and some that'll bloom in late summer, early fall, so that there's a food source throughout the season.
Yeah, in my rental house in town, I was going to make a xeriscape type whole front yard, and I realized how much time just the one area I did took, and how many years it takes for the plants to not look so depressing. Like, it looked like a bomb went off for the whole year, and these sad little plants were there. And then the second season, though, the echinacea started to really bloom. The Mexican hats were starting to look like something, but any planting that you make, it takes a couple years. So that's, I think, the biggest reminder for anybody who wants to take this on. It might take 2-3 seasons for it to look like the ads and the Google page, the beautiful full garden.
Yeah.
So don't be discouraged.
Don't be discouraged. Kelly actually taught me about when you're planting a pollinator garden, especially if you're planting from either from seed or tiny plants. The first year they sleep. So you plant them in the ground. It doesn't look like they're growing much, but really what they're doing is they're growing their root system. So they're growing underground and establishing themselves. So the second year they creep. So they sleep, they creep, and that's when you start to see some growth above ground. That's when the roots are healthy, they're feeling good, and then they start shooting up above ground a little bit. And the third year is when they leap. And the leap is when you start seeing big growth above ground, lots of blooming, things like that. The great thing about these native plants is that they are hardy to this zone, to this area. You'll have to water them the first year or two, maybe, but after that, it requires very minimal amounts of water to keep these plants alive.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of moisture right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely right now.
Besides it being -21 last night.
Right.
So with the initiative being in place, that puts like a grip on people being able to spray pesticides and stuff.
Not so much. One of the commitments to being a bee city is that we try to reduce the amount of pesticide use.
Sure.
So it doesn't talk about total elimination or total bans on pesticide. None of this impacts anybody on private property. A lot of this is just stuff that we use as guidelines for the way we operate and manage public lands.
Has there been any local landowners that have come out and said, "Oh, I'm going to use this initiative project on my private land"?
There's been a lot of interest, yeah, on both private properties owned by businesses as well as individuals have talked about wanting to sort of emulate what we're doing. And that's what we want to do, is showcase what this stuff can look like, what it can do for your landscape, and just have it be sort of we'll be the test run, and people can come check it out. And if they like it, they can try and copy it, and we'll give them the information and the tools they need.
Yeah, it's pretty cool seeing Spearfish. I'm from Los Angeles, so everybody's got putting green grass and perfectly trimmed trees, and there's zero weeds. And if you have them, it's frowned upon. You get tickets and stuff like that. So coming here to Spearfish, it was cool to see. We walked, 3rd Street, and they've got that zero-scape.
Is it Rotary?
Over by Rotary Park.
Yeah. Rotary.
Yeah, right there. This one house has their entire yard is, 4-inch, 5-inch high grass, and then their flower beds are just fully overgrown with, I thought they were weeds. And she's, no, those are for the bees. And I'm like, for the bees? Hunter Hippie. She's definitely the hippie. I'm new to all this stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about?
This last spring, I had my signs that say no mow May. And Mr. OCD over here is like chomping at the bit to
June
mow.
1st.
Yeah. And I'm like, do not touch my grass. We will fight. We will have an actual fight if you touch my lawn. And I actually had a few neighbors, and I feel like all of this, having you on, it's not expecting people to do it right away. I think the first step is the knowledge. The second step is maybe seeing the city and seeing it thriving, seeing bees, seeing other pollinators, because it's not just bees that are pollinators.
Right.
So seeing somebody else doing it and you're starting to get a feel for it, it's like you're dipping your toe in. So me moving to town, I already was no-mow maying my house in Mountain Plains for years. I looked like I didn't live there sometimes. But then being in town and having my signs on either side, like the 2 roads, I saw people taking photos of my signs with all the dandelions. And people are like, that's a weed. I'm like, it's actually a medicine. Like there's dandelion tea. There's like balms you can make from this.
Yeah.
But we've been conditioned through society to believe that a dandelion is a weed, when you can actually eat it and you can actually get nourishment from this plant. And it's one of the first blooming plants that give food to pollinators. It's one of the first foods after winter, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I got a funny story about dandelions too. So when I first came on in this position in 2019, that was one of the things I was looking at. Historically, that was the kind of the cultural or societal view, was that dandelions are weeds. And if you have dandelions, you're not taking care of your property and it looks bad. And as a result, what we had done historically before I got here was we would spray for broadleaf weeds in most of our city parks. And I looked at that and I didn't really agree with that. I knew about dandelions being the first source of food for pollinators coming out in the spring. And I pitched it to the director. I said, hey, what if we just didn't spray in the parks? What if we just were okay with dandelions and clover and things like that in some of our parks? And he said, I'm willing to try anything. But just know that when we start getting calls about dandelions in City Park, I'm going to forward all those calls to your desk. And I said, that's fine. I'm happy to take them.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And so we stopped spraying, and 5 years now, I haven't taken a single call about dandelions or clover in any of our city parks.
Mhm.
I have to also argue, not only is it not a weed, but it also is greenery. So it's a way when there's a drought for another plant to thrive. They also help with the pH levels and the health of the soils. I noticed when I lived in Mountain Plains that when I started the shift of the mowing, thinking it must look like a golf course type of thing, I started to notice a ton of dandelions in certain areas. And it was mainly and thistle, like the Canadian thistle. I noticed the thistle was where the ground had been disrupted. The people before me had a big dog kennel in one area, and there was thistle like 3-4 feet tall there. And it might have been there for 1-2 years, and then all of a sudden they went away. They did their work to the soil. They helped revitalize whatever was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned more about that with dandelions. It's because you're low in this in the soil. And I even started to notice over the years the dandelions cut back. And then I started to see these beautiful, I don't even know what they're called, beautiful little purple flowers. And I think I was in escrow and I was selling that house. I was walking through the yard barefoot, and I could name like 15 different plant species just in my quote unquote lawn.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so proud because I just thought biodiversity. Like, what can you explain what biodiversity is?
Sure. Yeah. Biodiversity is having a bunch of different, in this case, flowers or plants in a certain area versus, say, a monoculture where all you have is Kentucky bluegrass in a yard. And it's really to each their own. There's beauties in the eye of the beholder. And a lot of times that is the conventional wisdom, is that it has to look a certain way. And if it doesn't look a certain way, then it's not being taken care of or maintained. Biodiversity is definitely something that is very important anytime you're managing your property, or in my case, public lands.
Sure.
You want to have a lot of biodiversity. Everything from your grass and your wildflowers to the different species of trees that we have. Every year we plant 60 to 70 trees throughout our park system, but we try to mix it up and have a bunch of different species and genuses in that planting so that we're not planting all of the same type of tree.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I was doing that loop through Evans Park on the park side, not where you go into like the native grass side. You know what I mean? Before that fence line. And I was walking with my kids, and we were barefoot, and I stepped on, I thought it was an acorn. I stepped on it. I was like, ow, what the hell? And it was a buckeye. I was like, no way, there's buckeyes here. I was like, this shit only grew in Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah. We got some buckeyes planted over there at Evans Park. There's actually some really nice specimens over there.
Yeah.
You can actually get lucky, and sometimes the squirrels will bury them in our landscaped areas. And so you'll see little buckeye saplings come up in the mulch and in the landscaping. So we've even gone so far as sometimes to pull those out and repot them and try to grow them up and transplant them, put them in different
Trees
areas.
are expensive.
Yeah, I know.
I had to cut an elm down at my rental last year, and I cried. I totally hippie. But it had some kind of disease, and the guy was like, this is actually the worst I've seen an elm ever. And it was leaning over the house, over my son's room. So we got rid of that, and I went shopping for trees, and I saw this sapling, and they're like, it's $800. And they're like, yeah, and you have to water it every day. I'm like, okay, well, I don't live here. How am I going to come here every day and baby this thing to be self-sustaining? Like, shit. Hi.
You want to tell them about the ritual you had before you cut the tree down?
I will, proudly. So, trees are living, and I think anything that's living, show respect to. Why not? And so my ex, my son, and I, we had a little ceremony around the tree, and we gave thanks to the tree. And I have a video of Hendrix giving the tree a big hug and saying, thank you, you're beautiful. And just speaking to it, because like we have a connection more than we want to let up. I think of like Avatar, like we are connected. Do you know that if you cut a tree down, it actually disrupts the connection between the whole forest?
Yeah, I know that the trees do communicate with one another
Yep.
through the root system and can warn each other of different things
Threat.
environmentally that are going on and stressors so that the other trees around themselves can boost their defenses.
Yes. Or if one's depleted in something, they'll send through the roots, they'll send the nourishment to that sick tree.
Mhm.
So all I'm doing is thinking about this tree. It was huge. So how long were you here? How is this going to disrupt the connection between all the other trees around it? So we're just giving thanks. And we all said something kind to the tree the night before it got cut down. So neener.
Is there a city translator that can tell the pine trees to stop dropping their fucking needles on everything?
I haven't figured that one out yet. I haven't cracked the code on that one yet.
I'm tired of cleaning it off of everything.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yep.
it can be, there's a little bit of maintenance, a little bit of
Yeah.
So there's something that stands out to me. So my dad is very much used to green grass, lawn, mow. He's got 70 acres. And every year, I swear to God, he like adds a little bit more that he mows. And I just want to kick him in the shins. Dad, if you're listening, stop it. And I tell him all the time. So like my own dad is not this hippie guy. But do you know the history behind the grass and like mowing a lawn and what that meant with status?
Yeah, I mean, it dates back to like Europe and,
Yeah,
when
like
there was,
having the money and being well off to where you didn't need to use all of your property for a farm, like for crops.
growing food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a status thing.
Yeah.
And it was like the 15th century or something insane.
Plantation era.
It's like long time ago, and we're still following that. I will admit, it was very difficult to not want to mow the first year. It was like going against the grain because I'm so conditioned and I'm pretty OCD and everything that I was just like, oh my God, my neighbors are going to see all these dandelions and the grass is getting long in May. Oh my God, it's over like a foot tall.
Yeah.
Like it's hard, but it's just like anything. It might be uncomfortable at first because it's new, but then over time, it just becomes second nature.
And I think there's ways too that you can make a compromise.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be all one way or all the other. If you want to have mowed grass, if you want to have a lawn to go out and play in and walk around in, you can mow some areas. Maybe there's a section in the corner where you don't need to mow or where you want to add
Baby steps.
pollinator friendly plants. Yeah, baby
Yeah.
steps, exactly. And some people are working with a limited amount of space and they want to have different features in their
Mhm.
garden or on their space, and that's fine. And so there are little ways where you can, even if you want to just carve out a little section that you do as a landscaped area and you plant native plants there, that's better.
That's what I did.
Better than nothing.
When you pulled in, obviously it's snow covered right now, but when you pulled in, there's a big open area right there, and it was all pretty much trimmed down when we moved in. And then as you drive down the driveway, the sides of the driveway, they were just like ripping through your car from the overgrowth. So we get the lawnmower here, and I just whoosh right to town. Just one lawnmower width on both sides of the driveway. And she's like, if you do any more,
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in the dumpster.
These are fighting words.
Yeah. It was funny.
Yeah, like that area out front is an area, say, if I was new to it, I might section off an area or just make the space of mowed grass, make it smaller. That's what I did at my rental house. When I lived there, I had a 15 by 10 foot area in the corner along the alley that I just left tall. But then everything else, it was bugging me because I know I'm in town.
Yeah.
There's a difference between being in the forest like I am now versus being in town.
Sure.
So when I was in town, I did the no-mow May. It got almost to the end of May, but it was getting it looked like I didn't live there anymore.
Yeah.
So eventually I'm like, you know what, bees? I wish you luck. I did my part. I'm now going to cut this down.
Mhm.
It makes sense. And that's why I feel like we as the city and as the parks department, we do have a lot of land that we manage, that we take care of. There are areas that we have to mow. But there are also areas where we've identified this can be a no-mow area, or this would be a good spot to install a pollinator habitat, or maybe just enhance it by either not mowing or stuff like that. Just know that even if you are in town and you mow your grass, it's okay. We got you covered. We've got a lot of area that we are trying to maintain that as well.
I keep thinking of that beehive traffic circle that they put in, that beehive sculpture.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
just why don't you guys just make that primitive to bees and then put one of your bee signs up there?
Yeah.
I was telling her I saw one of the Bee City signs right there, Spearfish Canyon Road in Colorado.
Mhm.
But I was laughing to myself like I always do. And I was like, that'd be funny if spring or summertime, there's just tons of bees swarming around this big beehive that they put in the middle of the traffic circle.
Oh, the roundabout.
The roundabout.
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
That half of South Dakotans don't know how to drive around.
no.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's
I'm
like,
like,
"Commit!"
you guys don't know the traffic circle.
For what? I love the roundabout. I think
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah.
And I love the sculpture. I think
Yeah,
that's
it's cool.
great. I think it's a good welcome to campus as you're on your way up to Black Hills State University. We actually the Parks Department just took over the responsibilities of maintaining not only the roundabout, but all those medians, Jackson, all the way up to
All
exit
foliage.
12.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I like the idea of maybe throwing in some native plants around that area. And
Yeah.
because we're maintaining it now, so we can do that.
I figured you guys would be.
Yeah.
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 I just thought it'd be cool if it was like you're driving up and you just see, oh, what is that giant round sculpture? And then you see a ton of bees and you're like, oh, it's a beehive.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's-
So speaking of, you're talking about beehives. Do you remember the fact that I was asking you for that quiz? I don't
Yes.
know where. Yes. Okay. The one where which bees have a hive,
Mhm.
and it's only honeybees, right?
So when people think of bees, they think of honeybees and the honeybees that people have and that they put out in orchards to pollinate crops. Those are European honeybees.
Not even
Introduced.
native.
They're not even native. So what we're really focused on as a bee city is native, not only bees, but pollinators, butterflies, moths,
Hmm.
even wasps can be pollinators. I'm not a
Even
big
though
fan
they're
of wasps.
unpleasant.
I don't like wasps.
Can you explain then what is a native bee? Like, what are the behaviors of a native bee?
So a lot of native bees are actually solitary, which means they don't have a beehive that they go back to. They don't have these colonies where they make honey. They live kind of solitary lives. A lot of them will either burrow underground or even in the winter, they'll hibernate in stalks of the native plants. Once they've bloomed and they've died and they've fallen off, they'll leave a little hollow cavity that the bees will tuck down in and shelter in there for the winter and hibernate. Here's a fun fact for you. I don't have the quiz, but take a guess as to how many native bee species there are in the state of South Dakota.
Probably 15.
15? You got to guess?
60.
400.
I was gonna say 600. Dang it.
400. I was blown away. I thought
Really?
like you. I thought maybe a dozen.
Yeah.
400 just in.
South Dakota. Yeah, there's 3,600 across the country in the
Wow.
United States.
That's crazy.
So I got a vendetta with bees.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, please share this.
So I was
Lovely.
3 years old in California, specifically the black bumblebee. And I had this obsession with, I would go pee in my diaper, but if I had to poop, I'd go outside and poop. So I'm outside pooping, and a black bumblebee stung me in my right testicle when I was 3 years old. And my parents had to take me to the hospital because it swelled. And my dad tells the story now, and he said it was like a softball down there. And he was freaking out crying. My dad was 18 when I was born. So he's freaking out crying, thinking they're going to have to amputate.
What is Jules?
Yeah, not as Jules. So I've always had, like I hear the buzzing of a bee and I'm like, ugh, and I'm like, no.
Mhm.
But I love honey. So I'm all for save
And
the bees. 'Cause,
Before we started, though, he was like, "Isn't there like one type of bee? It's a honeybee."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "See, this is why I want you on."
there's a honeybee, there's a bumblebee, there's a wasp, and there's a hornet. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasps and hornets can go away.
And don't most of the bees they don't sting, or is that wrong?
There are bees that don't sting. That's
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
And a lot of times the bees, even the native bumblebees, they'll sting as a last line of defense.
Yeah.
You probably heard that where they sting you and then when they detach, it basically rips off the back part of their
Mhm.
body, their abdomen.
And then they
and
die.
they die. So it's a one and done. Yellow jackets are a little bit different.
They like
Mhm.
bite you,
Yeah,
right?
They just repeat it
Same.
over and over and over. So they're a little bit different. But for the most part, I've got 2 young boys and they're always cautious of bees, or when people see bees around, they can clam up. Generally, if you just leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. But usually when it's an accidental type of thing,
Mhm.
if you accidentally step on,
That's what I did.
Yeah.
It's the only time I stepped on one. I ran out of the pool, and then another one. It was in my hair, and I grabbed whatever I thought was a fly, and I grabbed it, and it got me in the hand. It's not like they're coming after you.
Right.
right.
It's if you're threatening their life, or I guess if you're messing with a hive. But
yeah,
again, that's more wasps, and they would just sting you repeatedly.
Right.
I might
Lovely.
date myself a little bit, but when I was a kid, there was like the whole Africanized honeybees.
Mm.
And they were saying, oh, they're going to invade the United States. And when they come to the United States, they're just going to sting everybody repeatedly and kill everyone. And there was like movies about it, and it was all like sitcoms, and it was stupid. But I'm like, what? But I have seen where, like I was in the Marine Corps, and in 29 Palms, we have what's called a water buffalo, and it's just like a giant water tank that's spray painted so that the water doesn't mold in the sun.
Right.
And it's a spray painted tank, and you walk up and just turn the faucet and refill your water bottle, and it's potable water. And when you turn it off, it would get a slow drip. It would attract every bee in the desert. Like you had hundreds of thousands of bees all over these water buffaloes, to the point where they had to bring new ones in because we couldn't get water.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm like, man, that's crazy. But yeah, it was funny because I knew of honeybees, I knew of wasps, I knew of hornets. And then I figured a bumblebee was like a pollinator, and then a regular bee was a honeybee, and that was it. And then the Africanized honeybee thing, they called them killer bees.
Yeah.
They're going to follow you around if you make a sound. I'm like, what? I was like, it sounded like one of those fishing stories. If you talk while you're fishing, you're not going to catch any fish. But yeah, okay. If I talk, they're going to follow me.
It is fascinating. 400 just in South Dakota.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And speaking of water, people don't think of that, but bees do need water. They do drink water. I think it's typically they're within 150 yards of a water source, which, again, the Parks Department is one of the largest landowners along Spearfish Creek, the Spearfish Creek corridor. And whether or not bees are able to go there and get water, if they're getting them from other sources, we did a neat thing with a student up at Black Hills State University. And she basically worked with one of our committee members. She's the assistant city planner. She's very well versed in GIS and mapping, and this student was a GIS student. And so she did a student project, and based on a few different parameters, she was able to put on a map areas within town that would be good for us to look at as pollinator habitat, either enhancement or creation. And one of the filters was proximity to water, a water source.
So is there quite a bit, like off the banks of Spearfish Creek?
Yeah, basically. And some of those areas we mow the grass, we maintain it. There's a lot of people there. Probably not suitable for bees or pollinator enhancements, but there's other areas that are, less trafficked, a little bit off the beaten path. And those are the areas too that we like to focus on. Some of those areas we've turned into no-mow areas over the years. We've seen different kinds of wildflowers and forbs and grasses come in over there, which has been neat to see when you just let things go, what will pop.
Yeah, it's at the ecosystem and Mother Nature. It's like she knows what to do.
Right.
Weird when we get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
Yeah. Also, I remember at one of the meetings, you guys were talking about bats. Like, what exactly is that? Like a whole other thing?
Yeah. So that was, let's back up. I mentioned Lookout Mountain earlier. We manage Lookout Mountain, the trails up there. Right now I'm putting together a grazing lease for Lookout Mountain to bring cattle back. It's been a couple of years since we've had cattle up there. So I reached out to a lot of the experts. I reached out to a range management specialist at the NRCS, also at South Dakota State Extension Office. I worked with the Xerxes Society. They have a range management specialist, so they're the ones that put on the Bee City USA. They have range management practices that are good for grazing as well as pollinators. And what was really interesting to find out about that whole thing was the fact that all these different people were saying it's a good thing to have cattle grazing up on Lookout Mountain.
Really?
Which, going into it, I thought, you know what? We should not have cattle up there. We got people riding bikes. We got people hiking. We got people going up there and having picnics and things like that. The cows, they get on there. They walk on the trails.
They leave their presents.
They leave their presents.
Mud pies.
And yeah, I was kind of the mind, if we could get the cattle off of Lookout Mountain, that would be better for the community. And really everybody I talked to said these grasslands, the ecology, the environment that we have out here evolved over thousands of years with large mammals grazing throughout and roaming throughout this area. And by fencing it off, by not having cattle up there or large mammals to graze it, we're actually doing a disservice to the environment up there. And we're seeing the introduction of invasive grasses are taking over, which means they're choking out some of the native vegetation, the native wildflowers. And to bring it back to the whole point about the bats, we also talked to the Bird Conservancy of the Rocky Mountains. I reached out to them, got them involved. They came out, they did a bird survey up on Lookout Mountain as part of that, gave us kind of their ideas on good conservation practices. And they mentioned the northern long-eared bat, which we could have in this area. They didn't have any, they weren't able to identify any when they were up there, but it's something that we now have to consider when we're up there cutting trees. We basically don't want to cut trees during the summer months. That's typically when the bats would be passing through this area on their migration. They'd be roosting in those trees. So we leave the trees alone when the bats could potentially be up here.
What do they do for the ecosystem?
Bats are great. They eat insects. They eat a lot of insects, especially if you have mosquito problems. You'd want to have bats.
Is that like
I'm all
too
for it.
summer?
Can we have pet bats? I hate mosquitoes.
I have a bat box
I know.
in the, what is it, south facing, or is it, do you want it south facing for bats?
They've got kind of guidelines that are better. I think it is south facing because you want it to warm up
Yeah.
during the day. We actually did have a private resident who had a big bat box in his backyard, and I never had any bats in it. So do you guys want it? Do you guys want to have it? And we're like, yeah, sure, we'll take it. He donated it to the Parks Department. We actually put it out at the new Keating Resources Sportsplex.
Yeah.
Out at Exit 17, tucked back behind our maintenance building, because it was a couple of years ago, I think, where we had in 2023, we had a lot of rain. It was a wet spring. There was some standing water. We were having
so
a lot
many
of mosquitoes. And lo and behold, the bats are showing up. We had bats out. People were seeing, I saw a bat out there on the side of one of our buildings out there. And so we put the bat box out there. We check on it every once in a while to see if we have any bats. Nothing confirmed yet, but it's there if they want it.
What are the guidelines? Because I'm curious for my own personal interest.
For bats?
Yeah.
So
tell me it's under 25 feet.
It's close. Yeah, it's up there a ways. Ours is probably about 20 or 25 feet in the air. Now, don't quote me on this because I looked it up when we were installing the bat box, but it was like, I think it was like south facing. If it is like around a group of trees, you want it to be on the outside of the group of trees towards the fringe. I think because bats they eat insects a lot of the time. So they're out flying in the open areas. I don't know that they're necessarily flying through the woods.
So I might not have any use for this bat box. Do you want a bat box?
We could put it on the furthest tree out.
Oh, yeah.
East and south.
Yeah, we could.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Look at you. Problem solving. That's cool.
If anybody wants to donate and contribute, is there a place that they can go to and donate online?
So far, we haven't taken any monetary contributions in terms of donation.
Is it more donating your time?
It's more donating your time or your resources. So our committee, like I said, we meet monthly. It's a group of volunteers. All of us have a full-time job outside of that. So the more community involvement that we have, for example, we have a lady who is retired. She cares about bees and native plants, and she's attended a lot of our meetings. She has volunteered to do a lot of the community outreach stuff for us, just putting together materials, maybe trying to reach out to the schools and get the schools involved. At this point in time, we don't necessarily have a page where you could go and donate money, but I would encourage anybody that's listening that, wants to get involved, certainly reach out to us, come to our meetings, find out ways in which you could get involved. Donating of your time is probably the biggest thing, because really, like I said at the beginning, a lot of the commitments that we have as being a bee city are things that we're already doing operationally. So we have money within our operations budget, every year to plant trees and to plant flowers. We have, different little landscape projects that come up. We have worked, like we mentioned, Rotary Park earlier. There's a big pollinator garden right in the middle of Rotary Park. We partnered with the local Rotary Club. And so what we did is, it's city property. They've given money over the years to that park. They've given their time to come over and help with some different maintenance things. We went over there, we prepped the site. So we stripped the sod. We actually took it over to the dog park and put the sod down over there.
You always need sod there.
We always need sod there. And we helped prep the site. We brought in some materials. They bought all the plants and transplanted some plants, and they did all the planting. We came in and helped water after the fact. So Anybody that wants to contribute and be a part of it, I would say if they could donate their time, their expertise, even just their passion for this stuff would be, beneficial and helpful.
So then the next question I can think of is anybody that doesn't live here, what can their town do initially to dip their toe in? What would you say is the first step to just being Bee City curious?
Anybody that's out there is Bee City curious, I would say the first thing you have to know is how are you currently managing your public lands for the community? What are you doing? Are you doing more harm? Are you doing more good? Have you even thought about it? Are you just doing what you've always done because that's the way you've always done it? And really look at what you're doing and how you're doing it. Even if you're not a Bee City affiliate, you can go to the Xerxes Society webpage, and they have a ton of information about different things that people can do individually, municipalities can do, counties can do, states can do, just little things that you can do that will really just help enhance the pollinator habitat that's already there with very little minimal overhead costs. Sometimes it ends up saving you money because maybe you're not mowing a bigger area, or the stuff that you're planting after you water it for a couple of years, you don't have to do anything with it. You just let it go. And I would have to say too, that just from the community feedback that I've gotten, everybody's been very supportive of this. They all think that this is a good idea. They want to get involved. There's a lot of Spearfish is rich in its agricultural history. For the last 100 years, that's what Spearfish was known for, especially down in the valley in that area, growing produce for the different communities around the northern hills. And so everybody's very aware of that. They're very in tune with that. There's seed swaps that happen where people are giving each other different native seeds and things like that. Anybody that's curious, I would say, could go to the Xerxes page and just see what they recommend, understand what you're doing, the way you're managing your lands. Anybody that's curious in South Dakota, any municipalities out there, Spearfish is hosting the South Dakota Parks and Rec Association annual conference this October.
Okay.
In Spearfish. And so as the host city, it's up to us to plan the event, to plan the conference. And one of the things we're doing is we're actually bringing in a speaker, maybe 2 speakers from the Xerxes Society to talk about Bee City. And we're going to have municipalities from all over the state coming to this conference. We're probably going to have close to 200 people in attendance. And the idea is that Xerxes will be able to come in and present what the Bee City program is so that we can get more cities in South Dakota a part of the Bee City USA program.
That's amazing. South Dakota's pretty dry. It's the plains.
Right.
So if we're able to use plants that have survived here forever and once again let the ecosystem thrive, not only are you helping pollinators, you're cutting down your water use, so saving right there. Right. The time spent in mowing a lawn, imagine if your lawn was half the size because you now have a flourishing ecosystem. I think it's absolutely adorable, the little story walk that you guys have. There was one book that I read while I was walking with my son, and it was this little girl who wanted like a little patch of wildflowers in their yard. And then the next year she wanted a little bit bigger, and she noticed that birds were coming. And then eventually their whole yard was just a thriving ecosystem, and they ended up putting a little pond, and there was just wildlife in the yard. And I think it ended with the neighbors peeking over the fence going, "Oh, what did you do over there? How did you start?" So it takes somebody to take that first step to create a movement. And I think that's amazing that Spearfish was able to not only be the Bee City, but now be a bee campus. So we're blazing the path for maybe the rest of South Dakota, or just like the Midwest in general. So I want to first thank you so much for coming here and sharing the knowledge, but also thank you for seeing that area of growth in our little community. It makes me happy.
I appreciate that. I'm just one guy with some ideas. First of all, we have an amazing team within our department. All of the guys that work in the department have bought in to this idea. They're coming up with ideas of their own. The director of our department, he's been here. He's worked his way up from park tech position all the way up to the director level. And a lot of times people, when they're in that position, will want to do things the way they've always done things, or the way that they know works.
What fits their budget.
Right, exactly. And credit to Tyler, he's very open-minded. Every time I've come to him with a new idea, he's generally all for it. He said, we'll try it out. If it doesn't work, we can go back to how we were doing it, and we know that it works. So we've got, I've got a lot of support. I've
I
got
love
these
that.
ideas, but I've got a lot of support internally from the crew, from the director, and then that extends out to our Park Rec and Forestry Board.
Dang it. Look at it's like,
We're in
shut
the
up.
dark.
Yeah. I'm in the dark. That's okay.
So
we'll keep
anyway,
it.
I appreciate our team and our community leaders, the city council, the mayor, everybody that's bought into what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and they've been very helpful all along the way.
Thank you so much for coming. We will make sure to have any PDFs, any links that you find relevant. We'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah.
We'll add your contact. And again, if you guys have any questions that you want us to ask Rex or that you want us to discuss, feel free to submit it or email us. And always, we love hearing from you. And also, we want to get some reviews. So if
Yeah.
you're on,
Leave a review.
motherfucker, no. Yeah, we
Fuck's
want
the
to
matter
hear
with you?
from you. But thank you so much. I hope this brings knowledge to other people.
I hope so as well. That's the whole point.
Yep.
We want to spread the knowledge and spread the wealth and spread the pollinators.
Hell yeah. All right. Thank you.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Woohoo.
Woo.